So you want to record songs without playing any real instruments? Are you crazy? That's okay, because I'll show you how to be crazy. Let's do this. Hello, first of all, welcome back to my channel. If you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe. I'm trying to grow this channel as hard as I can this year. So please help me out. I do a lot of crazy things like this, and I teach you how to do these crazy things so you can have some fun with music, especially punk rock music. And a lot of you were asking me to do a tutorial on how to make punk rock without touching any real instruments. How would you do that? Virtual instruments, right? VSTs, AUs, plugins. Are they as good as real instruments? They will never be. But still, they're getting really good and you can do a lot of stuff with them. Especially if you can't play real instruments, you have to be quiet or silent, or you're just trying to turn songs really fast. They're a great option for you. But before going into the tutorial, I gotta tell you and thank my good friends at UJAM, because when you guys asked me to do this video, I was just like, there's no way I can do this with Ableton plugins. There's some pretty good pianos and basses in there, and even orchestral instruments, but there are no good rock instruments that come with Ableton Live. So I would need to find some third-party VSTs to do this, right? And luckily, I have some friends at UJAM that gave me 3 plugins to make a very, very powerful power trio, like Blink-182 or Green Day, right? These techniques that I'm gonna show you work on pretty much every virtual instrument VST that you can find for guitar, bass, and drums, but I'm gonna be using UJAM because they were cool enough to give them to me. And if you wanna buy the same ones that I'm using, please use my affiliate link down below. But anyways, thank you, UJAM. Disclaimer is done. I'm doing this video in partnership with them. They're not sponsoring it, but they did give me some stuff for free. So there you go. Now you know. But let's go into the video. Well, this is the little song right here I put together for you to show you my best techniques on how to make an instrumentless song, right? So I've got 3 of the UJAM plugins. I got VD Heavy, the drums, VB Rowdy, the bass, and VG Iron 2, the guitars. You could use any plugins you want, but these are the 3 plugins that I'm using. And I'm also using some extra plugins to mix the song a little bit. I'm not mixing too hard because I want to leave it quite raw so you guys can have a real idea of how it would sound just out of the box with this instrument. But I'm doing a couple of tricks just to bring the song a little bit more to the real world and make it sound a little bit more realistic than just having the straight sounds of the virtual instruments in there. Let's start from the beginning. Always start with drums, right? So for the drums, I got VD Heavy. That's how these drums sound. For the drums, I chose this preset right here, Red and Hot, probably based on a very red and hot band. But yeah, this is the one that I chose because it sounded quite 90s punk rock. I know they're not a punk rock band, they're Red and Hot guys, but they have some Californian influences and sounds, right? So I thought that out of all of the presets that I browse here, there's a lot of presets in here, you see? So many. But out of all of these presets, I like the Red and Hot more. You can always customize it a little bit. One of the reasons why I like the UJAM plugins is because they get you quite close to the mix sound of the drums, because you can have a lot of customization in here. You can choose your drum kit, you can choose your mix preset, you can choose the amount of what you want in there, you can put more slam in there to make your drums more slammy, right? You can choose individual pieces right here, you can raise their volumes up and down, you can raise the reverb for individual pieces as well. And one of my favorite things is that you can saturate in here, because I usually always saturate virtual instruments to make them sound a little bit more aggressive and real. So a little bit of saturation can be done in here. You can also do the reverb in here, and you can maximize it, which is one of the coolest things, because you can turn this knob up right here and make your drums super loud and aggressive, but not clip. That's what maximizing is, basically, right? I'm gonna go around messing with the sound a little bit so you guys can see the differences that it makes. So these are the mix presets that you can get. And I chose the raw because I wanted to do some of my own compression after and my own EQ. So I chose the raw, which I believe is the closest you get to the raw drum sound of this plugin. Let's check out how the saturation and the maximizing sounds. As you can hear, the saturation is very tasteful. It's very mild. So yeah, but I do recommend, even if you don't have UJAM, if you're using virtual instruments, just get Saturator or Decapitator or some other distortion plugin saturating the drums a little bit, because it does give it a more realistic sound. And maximize. Let's maximize those drums. You see, it just makes them louder and more aggressive and more compressed without clipping, which is pretty cool. So let's discuss now how I made these drums. As you can see here, they're just MIDI drums. So I could have just basically pressed B for benzo right here in Ableton and drew these drums from scratch. But I'm not a very good visual guy when it comes to music. I'm more of an ear and feeling kind of guy, which makes sense because it's music, right? So what I do is I play the drums on my keyboard. So let me erase this little piece right here and let's do it from scratch. So the first thing is you gotta turn on this little plus button here in Ableton Live. This is very important because this is gonna allow you to do overdubs with MIDI on the same track, and you're gonna see why this is very important in just a second. First thing I do a pass with my fingers on my keyboard, playing just kick and snare like this. And as you can hear, I kind of suck, but that's okay, because you can come in here in Ableton Live, press Command U and quantize your drums, just like that, and erase the crappy hits that you had. So remember, Command U to quantize your drums. Next step, I'm gonna play separately cymbals and hi-hat of the same section. So that's how this goes. Again, make sure the notes that you want to quantize are selected down here. Command U and it's quantized. Now you might be asking, but you only play snare, kick, and cymbals. What about toms? Well, I usually play everything on snare and kick. And if I want to turn this fill, for example, into a toms fill, all that I do is I come down here and I move my hits to the toms. So now this fill, instead of a snare fill, is a toms fill. So that's what I usually do. I write all my fills with the snare, which is easier because I don't have to play multiple keys and go crazy. And then I just shift them around to the toms if I want to. And if I want to make it a little bit more complicated, then I come to B for benzo. Remember, press B for benzo in Ableton Live, and you can draw some more hits to your fill like this. Pretty easy, right? All right, and that's it for the drums. I just go section by section, kick and snare, then cymbals and hi-hats. Then shift around to toms and other pieces if I need to. Make sure everything's all right in tempo. And those are the drums. Pretty easy, right? Not much of a secret there. Let's go to the more complicated and secretive parts, the bass and the guitars. Alright, and for the bass, I'm using VB Rowdy, which is kind of a rock bass plugin that UJAM has. It's like made for rock, and it has some really good rock bass sounds. Actually, I was really impressed with this one. This is the one that I chose, 90s punker. I wonder why, right? Does this song sound like a 90s punk song to you? It does to me. So it was really easy. I literally just chose 90s punker, and I didn't mess around with anything else. Nothing. I just put a little bit of an EQ after the plugin right here. You see, I have this API EQ here, 4 dB on 1.5, just to make the strings a little bit more stringy. That string noise, the pick noise that you need for punk rock, but that's it. All the sound is coming off this plugin. Again, this plugin is really cool. You can change a lot of things. You can add fuzz, you can change the kind of bass that you want with character, you can change the kind of amp that you want with amp, you can add more drive, which is always good for punk rock, right? Some drive in here. And there's also a finisher, which I'm not using in this case, and you can make your bass modern or vintage. And I already add compression, because every punk bass needs compression. So see, this is how the bass sounds in solo. You see, in solo it doesn't sound that good. Kinda hear that it's a digital thing and not really a person playing, but once you get the drums in there and all the other instruments, it sounds quite good. I feel that's a trick with a lot of virtual instruments. It's hard to let them shine on their own, but if you do a full song with them and you're careful with the arrangement, you're gonna be able to kind of disguise all their flaws, and together they'll kind of blend to make something that sounds real. That's one of the tricks. I will never leave any of these instruments soloed on their own on any section of the song, for sure. Maybe just the drums, because virtual drums are quite good. Like, probably virtual drums are the best virtual instrument that we can get at this point. But yeah, for guitar and bass, always have at least the drums in the back, at least something there with them. The way most plugins work nowadays, these virtual instrument plugins, I'm talking about the UJAM more specifically, but most of them work like this. They have the instrument mode, which you can play each note on its own like this. But the problem is, if I try to play this song, it doesn't sound real at all. Listen to this. Because I just don't have the same control as I would playing a real bass. And that's why most of these plugins come with the player mode, which gives you kind of a player, like a virtual player playing for you, and you can choose the way that he plays, and you can choose the notes in different sections of your keyboard. The cool thing about the UJAM plugins is that you don't even need the keyboard to figure things out. You can kind of play around here and see what you like more. So you have common phrases, style phrases, and play range. Play range is just the notes. I just chose the famous punk rock phrase, right? So this is this key right here. Check it out. So if I hold any note now, it plays for me. But if I choose another one of these keys here, these ones that light up and don't go away, it changes the way that it plays. And there's many options in there. But being the good punk rocker that I am, I only needed the 8 notes, this one right here. And I use that for the whole song. And the key for this intro and the verse, for example, is that you don't want any gaps in between the notes that your bassist, your virtual bassist is playing, right? But because I played these notes on the keyboard like I did with the drums, when I first played it, they were kind of like this. A little bit out of time, a little bit too short. So this is how that would sound. Check it out. And to fix this, all that I did was select the notes like this, all the notes that I wanted to be selected, press Command U in Ableton to quantize, and you have this nifty little legato button here that makes sure that the ends of the notes touch the beginning of the next notes. So press legato here. There you go. And now your bassist is gonna be right on all of the time, playing no gaps. It's almost unnatural, but it sounds cool. There was some sections of my song that I didn't want the notes to touch, so I just made sure they didn't touch, like here in the chorus, because I had the 8-note rhythm. If I played it shorter, it would go ta-dum, 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 like I wanted it to go for the little chorus section. So you see, because these notes are a little shorter, they just go ta-dum, 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 ta-dum. And that's just a question of really working out how long you need to leave this note on to have just 2 notes play. And that's basically what I did here. I can even lengthen this one a little bit because it's cutting a bit too soon. You see this one as well, it's cutting a bit too soon. So now it's gonna sound even better if I play it. So the bass was pretty easy, right? Because it was just 8 notes. So all I needed to do is come in here in the plugin, choose one of the common phrases here and just leave it for the whole song. But for the guitars, things get a little bit more complicated. First of all, because you have clean guitars and you have distorted guitars. And for that, you're probably gonna need to have more than one instance of the same plugin, as you can see here. I have one instance for clean, one instance for dirty guitars. And this is a little trick here in the end to fortify my chorus guitars that I'll show you guys in the end of the video, so stick around, yeah? This is Iron 2, the guitar plugin, right, from UJAM. For the clean guitars, I chose Nothing Matters, which is kind of a Metallica homage, I guess, but it sounded good on my punk rock song. Anyways, this is how this guitar sounds solo. And this time I had to be a little bit tricky, cause the guitar has 2 different phrases that it plays on the song. So the first phrase is this one, and the second phrase is this one. And you might be asking, how the hell do you change phrases in the middle of the song? Well, remember that I had to choose a phrase right here. This is exactly like the other plugin was, the bass plugin. You see, common phrases, style phrases, and then the notes that you want the phrases to play. So as long as this is chosen right here, it's gonna play this phrase on any note that I want. If I change this, it's gonna play a different phrase. But how do I change this in the middle of the song? You see this right here, C0, C1, C2. These are the keys of your keyboard. So in the beginning of the song, I don't want this phrase to be played. I want this phrase to be played. So this is C0, right? So if this is C0, this is gonna be F sharp 0. This one right here. So all that you have to do is click on your Ableton clip like this and make sure that before your guitar starts playing, you just throw in an F sharp 0 note. Nothing plays, you see? I can click on it, but nothing plays because all this note here is doing is switching that phrase. So let me show you guys how that works. So I'm gonna choose any random phrase here. See, I'm gonna click this one right here, but once my playhead goes through this little note here, it's gonna go back to the phrase that I want to be played. See, it jumped. I can do it many times for you guys to check it out. It always jumps back to the right phrase because this note is telling your plugin which phrase I wanted to play. So for the other section where my phrase changes, you can see here that I have another little note, so small, it's right here. I'm gonna make it bigger for you guys. C sharp 2 is gonna change to C sharp 2 phrase right here in the plugin. See? This phrase and this phrase. So this is the key to using these player kind of plugins. You have to determine which phrase you want your player to play. And usually if you use the phrases in the player, it sounds much more natural than trying to play everything on the keyboard like crazy on your own. It just sounds better because it's programmed by the guys who made the plugin and they took the time to make it sound as natural as possible. So make sure you use these little phrases. So that's the first little trick for guitars. Use phrases, and remember you can change the phrases by using the notes here in Ableton Live, the keyboard notes, right? Really simple stuff. Hope you guys understood that. But let's go to the dirty guitars where I do this again, but a little bit more advanced so you guys can check it out how it happens one more time. These are my dirty guitars right here. And I have even a slide going on in there. You see, that's a really cool little touch that the UJAM guys put in their plugin, a slide. It's very useful for punk rock, right? And the way that I make this happen is changing the phrase every time. So you can always check it out that I have the main note of my guitar that's being played here. And I have the little note that chooses the phrase that's going to be played. So these little notes are the notes that determine the slides. So if I go back into the plugin right here. Oh, by the way, I'm using I Am Rebel, the preset, because, you know, punk rock, we're so rebellious, aren't we? Even though we're 35 and getting older and having jobs, we're still rebels, aren't we? But I didn't change anything on this preset. It's just the I Am Rebel preset, and you can see here that if I click on this button, keyboard, it actually shows me what this common phrases side plays. So you see here, I need the pick slide and the slide down phrases for that little slide that I built in there, right? This one is going to be A sharp 1, and this is going to be B1. So if I go here to my MIDI clip, you see I have my B1 and my A sharp 1, which tells my player to play the slides. There you go. And this is the more complicated part because I wanted to have the chugging with the release. I didn't want it to be just chuggy, this little section here. Because if I just came in here, you see I got the notes being played up here and I got how to play them down here. If I just did this, you see, erase all of this. It would just become chugging. But I want the little famous punk rock release in the end. So this note tells to do the chugging, this note tells to do the release. Pretty cool, right? Really simple. And then it just goes into the same thing as the chorus, the 8 notes. See how it doesn't sound very real in solo? But once you put everything in there, it sounds much better. And that's where my little other trick comes, because this is pretty cool. So you see this little group here just for the chorus. I wanted to reinforce the chorus. Remember, I always tell you this, the chorus always has to be bigger, better, louder. The chorus has to be the chorus, right? So I added reinforcement guitars playing the same exact thing that my main guitars are playing. So all that I did was copy this MIDI here from this guitar 2 times in 2 different instances of Iron. So I made 2 tracks and I opened the I Am Rebel preset again, but this time instead of just using the preset, I chose my amp as direct. And what does this make? This makes the same sound that it would make if you plugged in your guitar directly to your interface. So no amp at all. This is the raw sound, the direct sound of your guitar going into the recording interface, right? So I did this twice. I chose direct on the 2 instances. I panned one hard left and one hard right, as if I was recording real guitars, you see? As if I was recording real guitars. And the key here is that I turned the variance knob differently on the 2 plugins. That will make the guitars play a little bit differently and the sound more like 2 guitar players playing one on each side of the stage, for example. So yeah, pan one hard left, one hard right, one the pickups on bridge, one the pickups on neck, variance a little bit different, one character on soft, one character on bite, both of them on direct right here, you see? Now I have this horrible sound of guitars being played directly to the interface, right? Why would I want this? Check how it sounds. Because if I get that sound, the pure guitar sound, I can use any amp sim that I want. And I can come in here and choose one of the best amp sims ever. This is Archetype Tim Henson, and this is in the default. I turned off the reverb here, and I played with the distance in the position here, so I made the microphones, the simulated microphones from my plugin, to go as far as they could from the cabinet, making my guitar sound a little bit more roomier and maybe more real. And if I mix that with the other sound from the plugin, I'm gonna have something that sounds way more powerful and real than just having the plugin on its own. And I will add a different sound, which is the Nero DSP sound, which is awesome. And my guitars are gonna sound much fatter, much more heavy and real and cool. So this is these guitars soloed. And add this one to those. Look how much better that sounds. So if I just leave this one on its own. Not as punchy, right? So bring back the Nero DSP guitars. And that's it. And one little last trick for you guys to make everything sound more real and in the real world, like not in the virtual world or the virtual instruments, but in our world, if we are in the real world and this is not the Matrix, right? But anyways, to make them sound like they're more in the real world, one last trick, and this doesn't have nothing to do with the virtual instrument plugins. I always put in my returns here a hybrid reverb, which is a convolution reverb that simulates real spaces, right? I put it on convolution mode right here, and I choose a cool sounding room down here. Put the dry wet all the way up to 100%, and I send all of my instruments a little bit to this room down here, making it sound like it's a band in the same room. So let me solo just this reverb. You see how that sounds like the room sound of a rehearsal space, for example, or a studio? It's so cool, and having that on the background really glues all those instruments together in one space and kind of make them sound more realistic. And that's it. That's it for the video today. I hope you guys understood everything I said. I know I'm not the best explaining MIDI stuff, but I think you guys have a good idea now how to use the phrases built into your plugins to make your songs sound better and more realistic and really not have as much work doing MIDI songs. You gotta have fun still, right? So why are you gonna draw every note, No! If you have phrases in there that sound better than drawing all the notes, use the phrases. And that way you're gonna write songs faster and it's gonna be more fun. It's gonna be cool. Please, please, please press like, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much to the UJAM people who gave me those plugins. Please use my affiliate link down below if you want to buy one of these plugins from UJAM. It's gonna help me a lot to kind of grow the channel. I'm just trying to grow the channel. I'm not selling out yet. I might soon, but not yet. And please press all the other buttons around me that help me out there in this world. And I see you all next time. Thank you and bye.